Hey, this is Michael Rosenbaum.
Hey guys, Tom Welling. Look, we've both played heroes.
And we both played villains. But in the real life, there are no reshoots, no stuntmen, or sequels.
We all make mistakes. We're all human.
Making one bad decision can not only land you in jail, but could also put yourself and other people around you in serious risk.
Be smart, make a plan, catch a ride, stay put.
Don't let a high moment turn into a lifetime of regret. This holiday season, be your own hero. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI.
Paid for by NHTSA.
Happy holidays! Want to give your host a gift? Consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show this holiday season. It really helps the show grow. From all of us at Believe, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and a Happy Holiday.
What is up, Los Angeles, and welcome back to your Rams LAFB show. Here to preview the big Rams-Lions match here in Week 15. Got a very special guest. I've been trying to track this guy down for a long time. He's one of the all-time ball knowers. He's one of the thought leaders out there. I know him from the Audibles and Analytics podcast, as well as the Read Optional Substack. We got Jon Ledyard in the house talking all things Rams-Lions. How we doing today, John?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited for this game. I'm not a Rams or a Lions fan or anything like that, and I'm still this excited for this game just as a lover of good football. So it's always fun when these two teams play.
Yeah, 100%. I was just on a radio spot there asking me about the McVay Goff rivalry, the tension between the two. It seems to be dying down, but I think this is still one of the best rivalries in the game, even regardless without that. So, yeah, I mean, I have to shout out, you and Oliver Connolly, your Read Optional co-host there, did a review of the Seahawks and Rams game just from a couple weeks ago, about an hour long. I was eating that thing up. I listened to it literally 3 times, an hour straight of just talking on that game, just pumped into my head. It was beautiful moments for me. I was taking notes and all that stuff. But, as an outside observer, you've covered the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers for years now. As an outside observer of this team, of this year, looking at the Rams team, what do you see that's making this year so special and different and feeling a lot more fluid offensively and dominant defensively? And then maybe what are some of the areas that maybe cause you to have some concern about this team?
Yeah, I think the Rams, the biggest strength that they have is their ability to just morph. They can morph into the things that they need to be. When they were at their best and won the Super Bowl, and Raheem Morris was defensive coordinator, and they were able to morph defensively into the things that they needed to be. McVay has always been flexible and creative when you're able to do those things at that level. I mean, Shanahan's another one. Like, the 49ers are always a threat, but, basically if they're haven't had any health luck and they're still a threat. So I think that's what the baseline that you get to, just because they're such good game planners and schemers and play callers, things like that. So that's sort of the baseline. The ceiling, I think, would be that this year it looks like they have a couple of the more special players in the league, and that's usually where you need to get to avoid, like the Bucs last year, for example, are a good team. Like, coaching wise on offense, they had lots of answers to the test, but did they have like elite play at the game's most important positions across the board? Like, I think that was where, like, really good, but elite. The Rams might have, Puka Nacua is making an argument for being the best receiver in football this season. And Devonta Adams, especially what he's able to do situationally in high leverage moments, because he is so hard still to stop, but in man coverage, I think those are the situations still where you see, like, he is so valuable to them. And where does most man coverage happen? Third down, especially third and short situations, red zone situations. So his ability to win in those high leverage situations is just massive for the Rams. So, yeah, and then obviously Stafford, probably MVP or definitely shortlisted, certainly deserving of MVP this season as well. So you've got really important players at like some key spots. I think that matters a lot. And then when you look defensively at a guy like Jared Verse and what he's able to do, and there's like good floor with all their defense, but he might be the guy that like is able to in the playoff game. I think that will be the question if we get into like what are some of the questions, concerns with them. They are really opportunistic and well coached in the secondary, and they don't make mistakes, and that is helping them a ton. you do wonder if you get into some of these top matchups and you have to run the gauntlet through 2 or 3 of these beasts in the NFC, will they get got in that secondary more than maybe they have so far this season? Especially if they get back to some familiar opponents in the playoffs. So that would be the concern, just that part of it. And then what's the 4-man rush like? Is it good enough? I think it is good enough. That's not as big of a question for me. Obviously, last year we saw in the first playoff game, there was no questions there. I think that will be like, does everybody take a leap in the playoffs type of question? I think specifically Braden Fiske, like he's the one question I have, because typically we've seen San Francisco, Kansas City, Philadelphia, teams that have had a lot of success in the playoffs the last couple of years. They did it with a more of a group rotation, right? And they had really good players, obviously, like no question about that, but they had depth too. They had at least 5 or 6 deep on the front. So is Fiske going to be that guy? I think we know Verse will be that guy, Byron Young, and Kobe Turner's a really good player. Is Fiske able to be that guy? I think he's been really hit or miss this season. And so there would be, for me, some focus on him and what kind of player he can be in that level, if he can make one of those crazy runs that we see from players in the playoffs out of nowhere. But that would be probably the biggest. They have enough depth up front, enough impact players there. And then I think just is the secondary like able to continue to be this mistake-free to make up for the fact that it isn't the most talented group in the league.
Yeah, the Braden Fiske question is an interesting one. What have you seen, from him that, is maybe causing some of that inconsistency? Because his rookie season, he played pretty phenomenally. And I do agree that it seems like he hasn't flashed like he did that year.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be some of this with Braden Fiske's game where like he will be in the backfield. And so some people correlate that to like, well, isn't that good? Like, and that is good. And this is why he was a tricky evaluation, is because he is kind of a havoc guy. So the more havoc that's created around him, the more he takes advantage, the more he can be in situations that look good for him. When that isn't happening as much, when he has to win 1v1, I think he doesn't have the physical advantage over most guys in the league. So that's part of it, I think. And most of the time when you're talking about interior players, you have length, strength, something like that. You're gaining some type of advantage physically. He's not necessarily going to do that in the trenches. So where he relies on is being a better athlete than everybody else. And, this is sort of now Fiske was a later pick, so it made way more sense to take him where they took him. But Mason Graham is some facsimile and in some ways to Fiske, I think. And why I was a little bit lower on Graham is because I think like they're good athletes, but are they good enough athletes to be the type of player they need to be in the NFL to be at the highest level, And so for Graham, obviously being the 5th pick, like that's a bigger deal than Fiske where he was drafted. It's like, okay, you're more willing to concede. Yeah, this isn't like a top 5 player in the class, but that's what was part of the narrative with Graham, I think, is that he is. And I was like, well, he's not going to physically dominate people. And if he's going to win, it's going to be because he's a great athlete and a great technician. And I think he's more like a solid athlete and a solid technician. And that's sort of where I feel with Fiske, is that I feel like he's more of like a solid, good athlete. Certainly testing wise, there's the things that you get excited about. When you watch him on a football field, though, it doesn't quite always translate the same way to where like guys are just like, oh, he's a 5-alarm fire off the snap. Like we got to like do this or that to like deal with the fact that he's so quick off the ball. It changes our set. We got to change our depth now that Rams can build attacks off of what Fiske creates. And Donald was the ultimate example. Obviously nobody's expecting Fiske to be that, but that's sort of like what you're hoping for a player like that. But as it currently stands, Fiske is more of a product of the environment that they can create around him, where he can benefit from others' success more so than he creates the advantages, and then others benefit from him creating the advantages. So, it wasn't like he was, again, like a 1st-round pick or anything, but I think at the same time, like when you have the type of expectations the Rams have, he needs to be a player, I think, that's able to contribute more 1v1 in the pass rush game. B, when he doesn't win, can he at least hold ground? The biggest issue I have with Fiske is he's on the floor a lot. And that is a problem because you need to at least keep pocket integrity so other people can benefit from their rush ability. If he can't even do that, then it becomes a liability because all of a sudden now there's escape hatches for quarterbacks where he was standing or where he's supposed to be at least controlling some space. When you're on the mat all the time, it breaks up the integrity of the rush as a group. People don't necessarily think about rush as a plan a lot of the time, but it is. Pass rush is a plan, especially with a 4-man rush. It's a plan. There's paths. There's areas that you need to hold. And he tends to take big chances and sometimes ends up out over his skis and on the ground as a result. So I think there's some things he can clean up. I don't think he's ever been like the highest ceiling player to me, but he still a player that I think because of the effort that he plays with and the intensity he plays with, and because he's a good enough athlete, he's still a player I think you could see having 1 or 2 splash plays in a big playoff game and benefiting from that, even if the larger sample size is like, I might have some reasons to be concerned here.
Yeah, super interesting that the strategy for the Rams was to add Fiske and Verse together simultaneously with that havoc kind of, and obviously Verse creates a lot of havoc with all that speed and strength that he has. And thinking about the Rams specifically, their game plan in the rush, they rank very high in those sims, stunts, and all of those kind of sets up. So it is very, very schemed up kind of a pass rush, it seems like. Yeah. And to your point, you're looking at this game on paper. I would say maybe for the first time in this kind of rivalry, the Rams are a better team on paper, have a more talented team. We've seen some of the depreciation of the talent from the Lions. Offensive line for sure, talent on the sidelines for sure. That's an interesting conversation to be had there. But we're in a time where it's a matchups league. So what matchups are you looking at in this game that can either tilt it towards the Rams' favor or towards the Lions' favor? And I got to point out that the Rams are a 5.5 point favorite heading into this game, which I don't know. You talk now.
Well, the Lions, yeah, I mean, it does seem like a good amount just how we see this game play out, but the Lions can still score in bunches. And so that's the thing with them, is that they are really talented offensively still, but there's also an area of weakness that to a degree that there hasn't been in the past, to the point where they were ready to bring Frank Ragnow off the couch because they just don't, the interior offensive line is just sort of a mess, especially in pass protection. Some of that is due to injuries. They've certainly had injuries. The other problem is that Taylor Decker is not, the Taylor Decker that he was 2 years ago, probably. And it's been fading, and Jared Verse just destroyed Taylor Decker last year when these two teams played. And that, I think, is on the menu again. What Taylor Decker struggles with more than anything else is the speed to power rush, and Verse is the strongest pound for pound player in the league, in my opinion. So I think that one looks like a nightmare type of matchup for the Lions. This is the one, I mean, other than the obvious storylines and what you hope that elicits out of a player like Goff, this would be the matchup on paper that the Lions probably hope to avoid the most, is this Rams team, because of the way that the Rams play and a lot of the different things that they can do. Anything that they can any way that they can cause with the rotations you're talking about, Goff to hold it for a second longer or to do something, that's where Goff can't thrive, right? The idea is that you don't want Goff to go to first read. If you can get him off of that, he really declines as a quarterback. Really good player, and almost always knows where he should go with the ball before the ball snapped. That's the hardest part about playing Jared Goff, is it's very difficult to confuse him. He is so intelligent as a quarterback. But I think if there's anybody that can do it, it's the way that this Rams front is played. And then the detonation of everything around him too, that's where the Rams can really win, is up front, those spots. And even Penei Sewell, I think I'm interested to see the Byron Young matchup. Like, he can struggle against a player like Byron Young that likes to high side rush, I think, more so than the national narrative would have you believe about Penei Sewell. Very amazing player, best run blocking tackle in the league. But I think in pass protection, there are some areas that they can attack. So just across the board, I could see this being a game where the Rams are able to wreak a lot of havoc up front and win 1v1 matchups. Then obviously when you combine that with the pressure stuff and the way the Lions backs, as much as I love both of them, and they have had a little bit of a tougher year picking up things in pass protection than they've had in the past. Well, Gibbs, it's never been his strength, and Montgomery's not been at his best maybe this year in that capacity. Probably a lot of that has to do with the shifting nature of the communication and their protections with Ragnow gone. And so that part is going to be all where the Rams test them. So when Detroit has the ball, to me, those are the biggest things I'm concerned about, is just like their ability to survive up front. If they can win there, I like their ability to do things the rest, even without Sam Laporta, who I think is a really important player for this matchup typically. Just with Jameson Williams is just a way better player than most people realize. And there's nobody in the Rams secondary, I think, that I would be like, oh yeah, they can match up with Jameson Williams if that's the route that they need to go. But the Rams are all about staying in advantageous down and distance situations as a defense. And if they can do that, I think the Lions are going to have a lot harder time.
Yeah. Sam Laporta is a big loss for this team. I've been thinking a ton about the Dave Canales game plan offensively from just a couple of weeks ago. rushing the ball 40 times, throwing the ball just 20 times, short passes, 5.5 yards, average depth of target for Bryce Young there. Really mitigating the pass rush and then creating kind of some opportunities in the back end for explosives, really, getting Emmanuel Forbes, let's say, one-on-one on Tetaroa or their other receiver they were able to target there. And the loss of Quentin Lake, I think, for the Rams defense, that side of things as well. If we can hop over to that side, well, let's shift to the Rams offense and what they can do. I just realized we had just been talking about the Lions.
Well, the Lake thing is a big loss. I mean, that hurts
Yeah.
them, and I think it hurts their defensive flexibility because of how good of a player he is to some degree. Now, the Rams have been so good at like just print the next guy, type of thing. So I think like the fact that they could do that in the game, like went down and still keep rolling, and obviously the trade that they made with McCreary, like, I think they've positioned themselves to be able to weather the storm a little bit in that capacity, but it's not going to be the same as when you have a guy like Lake, just in terms of even communication at that key spot. So it will be a spot where Detroit goes after them for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about in terms of Sam Laporta loss, is coming out of the slot there. They really haven't been playing that kind of quick game in the passing game. It's funny you mentioned JMO. He seems to be having this breakout year all of a sudden, where people are starting to recognize him. But the big question mark there would be, Josh Wallace has been the one that's taken over for Quentin Lake, former undrafted free agent. Covering the slot a lot. Amon-Ra St. Brown playing the slot a lot there. Is that an exploitable area for the Lions on this defense? Do you think that's a mismatch?
Yeah, it could be a mismatch for sure. It really, like I said, I think the biggest thing for the Rams is going to be, do you win first down? Because if the Lions are able to get you into third and short types of situations, that's where it can become really tricky with them, because then the whole playbook's open. The Rams are forced into man coverage. They don't necessarily want to play that way all the time. So they want to be able to dictate terms in terms of coverages. And if the Rams can be comfortable in coverages based on down and distance, they're a really good defense. When they have to play, when they're like, no, the game pace or the down and distance dictate a certain coverage is like, going to be used like 80-85% of the time, and they're suddenly predictable in coverage, that's when they don't have the talent to make up for some of those situations. So it's really going to be all about staying out of the situations where the Lions can anticipate and attack them easily, like man coverage situations. One area of the Rams that I think that will be tested in this game is just like, what do they look like defending the middle of the field? What do they look like at the linebacker level defending the middle of the field? The Lions have every single year, and they do this without being a great vertical passing team. The 20+ air yard stuff is not noteworthy necessarily for them compared to a lot of the other top offenses, but the Lions are still dynamite in the intermediate areas of the field, dynamite between the numbers. And this is where Jared Goff shines as a quarterback, probably more than anywhere else, and perhaps as much as any other quarterback in the league, is his ability to read and throw with anticipation in the middle of the field with accuracy. That is where top quarterbacks set themselves apart. Well, Ollie and I just talked about this on yesterday's pod, and we ran like a bunch of numbers and studies on it, and like people can kind of go listen to that and see, like, we talk about that area of the field being a barometer for quarterback play all the time, because that the top guys can play in the intermediate area of the field all the time. And that's where your best mismatches are. If you can play there, if you can anticipate, throw in the windows on time. If you're late, you're picked. So that's where the stakes go way up. And so the most scared offenses in the league, like the Eagles and the Steelers, they never throw the ball there, but the offenses that tend to trust the quarterback implicitly, and that's Detroit to the max, they play in those areas of the field. And so that is where the Rams linebacker certainly will be tested. Play action integrity, some of those things will be tested for them, I think, in this matchup specifically.
Yeah, Nate Landman's been kind of splashed onto the scene, and he's going to be taking care of a lot of that junk in the middle of the field. From what you've seen, obviously he's got those amazing splash plays. From what you've seen, coverage wise and whatnot, is he going to be able to hang with, if he's put up, if there's an instance where he's put up against Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, or somewhere around there?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, this is a tougher matchup than most would be for Nate Lamb, for anybody really at linebacker, because depending on who you get matched up against, obviously. But I mean, you just think of what they're capable of doing out of the backfield in Detroit. It's just a really tough matchup, and that's often who Landman's going to have. Now he's done better in coverage this year than anybody could have anticipated. Like, there's no way. I mean, if Atlanta knew this, they wouldn't have probably let him go. So this season has been like so good for him in coverage that I'm not going to take anything off the table. Compared to especially where like the level of expectation would be for somebody like him. But you have been able to see that part of his game grow in terms of just the feel for the thing and everything like that. Now, he's not in man coverage very often. Most linebackers aren't. So I don't think you're necessarily going to see like it be a 1v1 thing as much as it is how does he anticipate, like does he have an understanding and a feel for the route structures happening around him, because that is where I think you get attacked more than anything as a linebacker in this scheme. Is they pull you one way with one thing and they throw the ball in behind your head. And so the Lions are going to have their bag of tricks, I think, to get into that area of the field. And he'll be tested. I don't think will look at the end of the game and he'll have given up 0 yards or anything. But if that's the only place Detroit finds success, Landman's job also is stopping the run. And he's been excellent at that this season, one of the best in the league. So I think that that part of it for the Rams is probably as critical. And if the Lions are going to throw, 15 balls in the middle of the field and complete 10 of them for whatever and run after catch and stuff, okay, then you probably tip your hat. But I think if they can shut down everything else Detroit wants to do, and specifically not allow the splash plays to Jameson Williams, like the Lions need to be an efficiency-based offense. If you let them become a splash play offense and also an efficiency-based offense, now you're in trouble, because they can mount a drive or two just with all the tricks and all the weapons they have. But if you're letting them throw the ball over your heads and you're letting them rip off 50, 60, 70-yard plays and you're not tackling the catch, especially with Gibbs and Williams, then you're in pretty big trouble defensively, I think.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on the Detroit's running game so far. Obviously, this Rams team likes to play in a lot of dime, a lot of nickel, not a lot of base. I think that by far the highest dime percentage so far this year. In going back to that Canales game plan, that was their lowest dime playing of all season. Were they forced out of that because it was so run heavy, or yeah. I thought it was that was the prescription. You would say?
Yeah. Okay. That's absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, I think Carolina's ability to dictate some of those things, and then Carolina converted every fourth down. And there was some, obviously they threw, Rams threw a pick six. I think that's the only time it's happened this year. I can't really that's, yeah. It's not like necessarily the game script that you're like, the Panthers solved them. Like, in my opinion, at least, Panthers fans, I hope don't take offense to that. But I think that there was a lot of one-off situations. The Panthers executed really well. And I think McVay sort of said that after the game. People were like, how do you lose to the Panthers, brother? We thought you were the best team in the league. And I think he was like, he wasn't trying to be disrespectful to Carolina, but I think he was like, this is how it goes in the NFL sometimes, where you lose all the high leverage situations, and the margins are not on your side and you lose a game, a close game. And that happens. And obviously he was like, he understood that the broader picture of things, there was no reason to fret if you were a Rams person after this game. And that was sort of my point after the game, was like, hat tip to Carolina. They did a lot of awesome stuff and they made it as difficult as they could, but if they play 100 times, I know who I'm taking and almost all those. So that's sort of where I see that. But yes, I mean, you're right about that. In Detroit, it's been interesting. They lost Laporta. They can get in heavier personnels if they need to, but it's not quite, doesn't have quite the same threatening nature, I think, that it has in the past. So there will be some, how does LA respond to that, especially without Lake? It's like, well, do they trust the other guys to be able to execute against a scheme like Detroit's? Maybe that's where the question, I think, is going to lie more than anything defensively. And so we'll find out a little bit about their versatility, flexibility defensively without Lake. I don't know how much that'll matter for the playoffs if he's back, but I think it'll matter for at least assessing them as a potential 1 seed and for the rest of the regular season.
Detroit's run game has always been something that I've always been afraid of. Is that different for this year in this game? I mean, should they? Is that where it starts and ends, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not, certainly statistically, I guess, it's not been, it's still a huge threat because of their ability to hit splash plays. That's probably what I'd say more than anything. They might not be consistently as efficient as they've been in the past, but they're still 8th in EPA per rush, and a lot of that is because they can just rip off big ones when they need to. And so that's still there. You still, talking about Sewell, to be feared. You're still talking about a run game with a lot on the menu, very versatile run game. The interior offensive line is good, really good with the duo stuff that they do. I would say the doubles and climbs are where they get you. If they can get you into a light box and they can double and climb on you, all Gibbs needs is a seam. And if he's moving vertically anyway, it's pretty lights out stuff. Now, they don't have quite as much in the pull game as they've had in the past. And so that is where the Lions are more limited on the menu this year compared to past years. And so still a run game that can hurt you, not as versatile and not as overall as dynamic as when Ragnar was there and some of the pullers that they had in the past. But they still have Sewell, and his ability to pull still helps a ton. They still have lots of ways to get the ball in the space. When you have an advantage creator like Gibbs, who all you need to do is create an angle, and his acceleration can take care of the rest, it makes the coaching job a little bit easier and the ways to attack you a little bit more vast. So LA, I think LA's got their work cut out for them in defending the run for sure. It's not, fear is, I think probably relative in these situations. LA's done pretty well against the run this season, but I think that this is definitely going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to hop back over to the Lions defense specifically. Tons of base, big bodies on the field. Obviously, the 13 personnel for the Rams has been kind of revolutionary, changed how they really feel on the field, feeling a lot more fluid once all that clicked into place. They also play a ton of man coverage as well, highest in the league, I think the Lions do. Mm-hmm. Is there anything there in terms of being able to stop 13 personnel? And is playing man coverage against Devontae and Puka and a guy like, I want to throw Tutu Atwell and Terrence Ferguson in there because those are kind of their explosive elements that they have. Am I on to anything there, or is I'm just pulling
you're gonna have your hands full if you're Detroit, playing as much main coverage as they've played this season. If that's their philosophy, I think they've also been a pretty high pressure team and sending pressure team without that much payoff. Detroit's actually has one of the slowest time to pressures in the NFL this season. And that's where I think this will kind of start, is if you can't get to Stafford quickly, we already know, everybody knows at this point that blitzing him can be a pretty futile effort. And so if you can't get to him quickly with 4, like how desperate are the Lions going to get? And to me, this is where the game really falls apart, where they have to kind of win a shootout, I think, if they're going to win, because again, it's just a really tough matchup. Like, you can't rely on some of the pressure points that you could rely on against Tampa Bay or Philly and some of those matchups if you're the Lions. I think Aiden Hutchinson is a really good player. I don't think he's a tier 1 pass rusher or tier 1 defensive player in the league. I would take Jared Verse over him, I think, if I had to pick between the two, just because I think Aiden Hutchinson is a havoc benefitter, and he definitely creates some. Like, there are certain matchups which, like, he can overwhelm people a little bit, but you can see when you get into higher profile matchups with him that he doesn't have the athleticism or strength advantage to the degree that he does over backups. You can see, like, then that limits the bag. And now he has the inside counter, which will get you. He has the spin counter, which will get you. So he has a move in the bag. I just don't think it's quite as dangerous as, like, Jared Verse can bench press the top. He can bench press Trent Williams. He can bench press anybody in the league into the pocket. And so I think a lot of people would probably say, well, Hutchinson's tier 1. I mean, he's in the conversation for top guy after Garrett and Parsons. And I don't see him as quite that special player. Very good player. I'm in the top 10 still for edge rushers, but I just wouldn't have him quite that high. And then Detroit hasn't had anybody else. And that's a problem. Like, they need other guys to be able to take advantage of this thing. The Rams, certainly, if there's a concern for them offensively, it's if they get up against a group that is just so good up front, how will they handle being in 4 or 5 1v1 matchups across the board if a team can play them that way? That is a valid concern, I think, with LA for the playoffs, like, to at least wonder about that. I just don't think Detroit's the defense to expose that the way that they've played this season, the way that some of their guys have looked this season. So they have to find ways to do that. But if you blitz a lot against Stafford, you're probably going to get cooked. And if you play man coverage and blitz, I mean, you might get 40 rung up on you or more. So I think I'm really curious to see, and I respect Calvin Shepard a lot. I'm really curious to see, he's shown that he can game plan a little bit, and with limited personnel too. Now, he won't have Branch. I think Arnold's still hurt. I know Reed's back. He's struggled since he's been back. Robertson is probably your classic, if the vibes are right, player. He could look great. Like, he can hang with Justin Jefferson. If they're not right, he could just get fried all day type of guy. So I think that I'm really curious to see if Shepard's just like, we're going to do what we do. If he does, I don't know. I don't know if he can get away with that. If he can game plan something that we haven't seen, because he's a new guy, like I leave open that room for like, maybe there's a game plan and there was some things that we haven't seen yet that they're ready to roll. And I also wonder how much the Rams are going to go 13 personnel in this game, because this is a unique matchup, because the Rams will play heavy. Well, the Lions are like, we're comfortable with heavy. They play with 3 linebackers on the field more than any team in the NFL, not even close. So because of that, are the Rams like, well, then we're going to force you to spread. Like, we want more of your DBs on the field. We've seen these boys tackle. We know you're hurting at a couple spots. We're going to attack you that way. So I wonder if McVay game plans something that he is something different from his standpoint and gets away from some of the 13 personnel stuff, which the Rams obviously have all this in the bag, and they've pulled all this stuff out at different points this season. I think it's just that we haven't seen as much of the 13 stuff from McVay, so it feels new, but they've got all kinds of arrows in the quiver. So I wonder if we see as much 13, or if they're going to fight strength with strength and just say, yeah, we don't care if you guys play heavy, we're going to still be able to beat you, or if they're going to try and go lighter personnel and put the Lions in a spot where they think their weaker personnel's on the field.
Yeah, that's a huge question for me as well. And I think one of the telling things is, after 2 weeks of being a healthy scratch, Tutu Atwell is back on the active roster now.
That might be your answer right there, because he's not going to be on the field in 13.
Not at all. Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire here. How do you think this game plays out? If you want to give a final score prediction, it's a 54.5 over under, so pretty high scoring game, and 5.5 point favorites for the Rams, home favorites. What do you think?
Yeah, I just like the way the Rams offense is playing right now, and I'm not as high on Detroit's defense. I'll go like 38-27 or something like that, I think. Okay. I think Detroit's offense can put up points still if they can just keep Goff upright. But it has potential to not be as close as maybe some of the matchups in the past have been. But Detroit's offense, I just have a lot of respect for. Like, if they get in a groove, I think they have some real talent advantages. It's just, like I said, it's all going to be about whether they can dictate the matchups they want to or not. And that depends a lot on winning first down, in my opinion. All
right, there we have it. Jon Ledyard, tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, Audibles and Analytics is my Substack. Ollie and I talk ball. We do 4 hours of podcasting a week together. So it's a lot of like league-wide focus stuff. We just looked at the top 10 offense in the league. So we talked about the Lions and the Rams actually on that, but not as much about the Rams because we had talked about them, as you indicated, a lot in other podcasts. But we talked about top 10 offense in the league currently and who we saw and predicted as top 10 offenses going into the season, and where the kind of teams that have surprised have come from, what's going on there, what are the league-wide trends offensively that top teams are focusing on. I talked about one of those a little bit in this one. So we just did that podcast so people can go listen to. We did one on us teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs this past week, and just what the outlook is for those. And then we do tons of draft stuff, like really deep dives into draft analysis and prospects and skill sets and scheme fits and all that kind of stuff over on Audibles and Analytics. You can listen to that. And then I do a Bucks and Steelers podcast and some film stuff over there, and I'll have lots of scouting reports up there too, some video stuff at times. So yeah, it's like $5 a month or $50 for the year. So you get a lot of content for that charge, in my opinion. So I think people will enjoy it if they're into the kind of ball we talked today.
Yeah, 100% worth every penny, I have to say. I'm full-throated supporter. I got to get a t-shirt or something to really seal it, or a hat or whatever. If you got merch, I'll buy it. Anyhow, you guys know where to find us, LAFBnetwork.com. Rams LAFB, just type that in. I'm RL Anderson, LAFB on Twitter or X. And man, what a great talk. Appreciate you coming on. We'll be back with Erin Coscarelli and her practice report from Rams HQ on Friday. Until then, see you next time.
Hey, Ramley, thank you so much for hanging out with us and watching the Rams LAFB show. Quickly before you go, got to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. It's the #1 sports app right now, and you've got to download it because it's got so many great features that I want to tell you about. Aside from season-long fantasy, which is the best in the business, they've also got live score trackers, in-game updates, plus the live chat where you can actually communicate with other users right on the app. But perhaps the best feature, at least that I like, is the daily fantasy feature, or the live pick'em. Just pick 2 to 8 players across any sport: baseball, basketball, hockey, obviously football and our Rams. You're going to choose a player, just choose more or less. Matthew Stafford, more or less passing yards. Kyron Williams, more or less rushing yards, more or less touchdowns. 2 to 8, you can win real money. So when you go to make your first deposit, make sure you use our promo code Rams LAFB, and Sleeper's going to give you a match bonus up to $100. So you deposit $100, they're going to give you $100 free. You're now sitting at $200. You put in $10, they're going to match you $10. You're now sitting at $20. But on top of that, right now, Sleeper is offering all new user signups a $20 free entry, no deposit required. Go sign up. You're automatically invested $20 straight from Sleeper. But you can stack that offer with that match bonus offer to add more money. Just make sure to use that promo code Rams LAFB. Go check out Sleeper. Download it today. Tell them the guys at the Rams LAFB sent you. And as always, Ramley, thank you so much for making us a part of your day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening. Happy holidays! Want to give your host a gift? Consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show this holiday season. It really helps the show grow. From all of us at Believe, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and a Happy Holiday.